Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 11th episode of the BadMotoGP-Show. We had a hot weekend in Germany. Who would have thought that this might be possible? But apparently, the conditions were much worse than in Catalonia, for example. So, yeah, kind of weird, but it is what it is. And we are here to discuss everything. So, Keelan, you enjoyed the races?
Hello, Leo. Who didn't? I mean, I can't even say just hello to everybody. Who didn't? It was an unbelievable weekend in Germany. Of course, your native land and a country that I love very much, also. Ladies and gentlemen, the action from the Sachsenring was just incredible. Just all weekend. I thought it was a brilliant spectacle, as always. Thought the fans showed up and showed out brilliantly. I mean, we had over 100,000 people for Sunday alone for race day, and I think we had close to 300,000 across the whole weekend. So a brilliant weekend overall in Germany, even better races, and I'm looking forward to getting into them.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily consider the Sachsenring my home GP because it's the same country, but it's literally on the other side. If I was a rider, I would consider Essen as my home Grand Prix because it's just right around the corner. I will actually go there next week, just for the Sunday. Wake up early in the morning, hop into the car, and like 2 hours later, I'm there. So, and also because of all the historical events with Eastern Germany, the eastern part is a little bit weird politically giving because of the upbringings of people. So there are a lot of yeah, I would say disagreements between Western Germany and Eastern Germany and a couple of things. So not to get too political, but it's kind of weird, you know. But you understand if you live here. If not, it's probably the same with New York and Texas. You know, it's just the same country, but it's completely different. You know,
Yeah.
and yeah. But back to the races. We had an incredible performance from Fabio, which was basically a carbon copy of what he did last time out in Catalonia. And he once again, to me, proved that he's the best rider in the world right now. I mean, he was on a track which historically isn't necessarily the best one for the Yamaha. He was kind of surprised that he was third there last year. So good for him. And he was the first winner since Valentino Rossi in 2009, if I remember correctly, because 10, 11, and 12, Danny Pedrosa won. And from there on, as we all know, it's Marc Marquez. So, yeah, he was incredible. And what really impresses me that he has peak aggression and on the same at the same time he has a peak consistency. So I thought about this today. When did Fabio made a mistake in a race the last time? The last time out I can remember was last year in Portimao when he crashed. And this time out, I can't remember that he did a mistake in 2022. And he is super aggressive because he has to. He has, first of all, we have all the issues with the front tire pressure, the heat in Germany, which made following another rider rather difficult. And like the big problems of the Yamaha, the straight, like we had in Mugello or in Catalonia, wasn't the big deal in Germany because it's like the shortest track on the calendar and with the shortest straight. So not necessarily a big deal for the Yamaha, but still he put an emphasis on being in front because he had the medium rear tire. He had to be in front to not waste it. And yeah, but back to the point, it's really amazing to me that he's so aggressive, but at the same time he's so consistent. He's like walking. He's rope dancing on the fine line, which is too much aggression, but he's also not too cautious. So it's amazing to me. He is fully on a mission to defend his title, and I didn't see it coming. Not because I don't trust Fabio, but I didn't trust Yamaha, and I was kind of proved right because the Yamaha is still a piece of shit. But Fabio proves me wrong because I didn't expect him to overperform the bike in this way, you know. So yeah, absolutely amazing. And he also had this incredible pace without killing his tire. He had the medium rear tire, as I mentioned. Zarco had the hard one, and there were a lot of people who had some issues with the hard because it didn't give them the right feeling. So maybe the medium was the better option, but still you have to preserve the rear tire like Fabio did. And yeah, he is simply amazing. He combines everything that you need to have in order to win a championship in 2022. He's consistent, and he's fast. He's aggressive, which he has to be on the Yamaha, and he makes his life easier by being in front because he doesn't have to overtake. He doesn't have to worry about his front tire pressure. So yeah, my little Fabio monologue, like, what's the opposite of a rant?
That's that's good. Leave it in the comments if you know,
Yeah.
because I don't.
No, I
No,
don't know.
I mean,
You're actually a native speaker, so I have my excuses, but you need to know.
yeah, boys, we're in trouble here on the podcast. Even I don't know what we're meant to say. No, what a brilliant, brilliant performance. Yet, I mean, we're getting used to saying this regularly. A truly spectacular show from Fabio Quartararo once again. It's the story of this race. It's been the story of a lot of races this year. And this year was just another example of Fabio at his very best. Like you said, he traverses the line between aggression and caution better than anybody else in the grid. He knows how aggressive he has to be with his bike because it is still a piece of shit. I agree with you, but he makes it work. He makes it work in a way that nobody else can. And Fabio is to Yamaha what Marc Marquez is to Honda. He has a piece of shit bike mostly that only he can make work. No one else that rides that bike can do what he does. And that's a testament to why he's a world champion. And I actually have another interesting statistic for Fabio Quartararo, aside from the brilliant one that you already said. This is Fabio Quartararo's first ever win at an anti-clockwise track, obviously with Sachsenring being pretty much an entirely left-handed circuit, which would actually help me. Thanks very much for being considerate, Germany, as you are. It was great for Fabio, and he made it work brilliantly. I think he stuck, if I'm not wrong, did he stick? I think he stuck with the medium rear tire at the start of the race, and he used it to a T. He really did. And it's another point that you mentioned there, Leo, and an excellent point at that. His ability to manage tires is second to none on the grid. He always seems to make the right choice and he always seems to get the most out of them. And that's that smooth, flowing style that he has and that is his own. And that's not even talking about the race itself, in which he was brilliant. You know, he got out in front, put that pressure on Pecco Bagnaia, and Pecco just couldn't deal with it. I mean, Pecco had a great weekend. He obviously broke the pole record for Germany, but he just couldn't keep up with him. And when he tried to take it a bit too far, his bike folded on him. And again, that's him out in yet another race, which I didn't think I would be saying, but here we are. Overall, incredible, incredible, incredible performance from Fabio Quartararo. He was fast, he was aggressive, he was bold, and he was brilliant.
Yeah, I believe part of the reason that Fabio didn't win on anti-clockwise circuits before was that Marc Marquez won all of them. So nobody wins on anti-clockwise circuits. So it is what it is. You got to deal with it and take your opportunity when Marc Marquez is injured. No, but in all seriousness, he makes everybody on the grid look stupid, especially the other Yamaha riders, because when you want to be fast on the Sachsenring, you have to have a good feeling to the front. And I mentioned this previously that I believe that Frankie has some issues with the front end feeling because Fabio is super aggressive on the brakes, and that's where he makes up his time. And yeah, Frankie doesn't. So I believe that there's an issue, and also the big issue with the engine, which wasn't necessarily a factor in Germany, and the turning was good. So he made it work, and he has some kind of ability to be fast at the beginning of the race without killing his tire, and the Yamaha famously has some issues with rear grip. I mean, yes, it's power, but on the other side, it's also to bring the power that you have onto the road. So yeah, he does it. I don't know how. Probably all the other Yamaha riders don't know either. So we're not alone here. But yeah, the way with his pace and his aggression, how he broke Pecco basically, which was a weird crash. I mean, I can't remember a crash where the rear goes so slowly. I mean, you could literally watch it while it was happening in real time. And usually when you have crashes of the rear, it snaps and you get high-sided or low-sided, but it comes usually really fast. And it was also in a weird spot because it felt like he braked a little bit too late, but not necessarily too much that it became a problem, but it looked like to me he was slightly offline. And then when he opened the throttle, maybe there was an area on the track where the grip wasn't as high because he was slightly further out. I don't know. Yeah, probably only Pecco can answer that. So we have to ask him. But yeah, it was also weird because the rear didn't snap like usual on crashes where the rear goes. So luckily for him that he didn't get injured, of course, but also quite weird to explain because it was so slow, and the rear immediately was gone when he opened the throttle. There was an onboard where you can watch the throttle on the right hand side on the screen, and when he opened the throttle, like slightly, the green bar was like a centimeter or whatever, depends on your screen how big it is, but yeah, it was a fraction of full power, and it immediately went. Maybe he was had a little bit more lean angle on an area of the track where the grip wasn't as high. Maybe it was just, I believe he had the hard rear tire. Maybe it was just this, I don't know. Or maybe it was just Fabio beating him into the first corner like 2 times in a row. And he thought, damn, I have to put him under pressure to have a better pace towards the end. So yeah, but this can't happen because Pecco effectively threw his season away. It was like a very, very, very slim chance, nearly impossible after Catalonia, because through no fault of his own, he got taken out. But yeah, now I would say it's completely impossible because even when Fabio makes like 1 or 2 mistakes, he's still 40 points down. And Fabio doesn't make mistakes, as we covered. So it's definitely an area that he has to work on, because you have to be consistent in modern MotoGP. You can't expect to crash out like 3 times or 4 times and compete for a championship, because everybody's competitive, everybody's good, and yeah, you won 2 races, but if you crash in 3 races, there's no way you compete for a title.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to disagree with pretty much anything you've said there, Leo. I'll talk about the crash first and then move on to what it actually means for Pecco, both in the immediate and the longer term. It was a really strange crash. There's no 2 ways about that. It was a very, very strange, slow crash that, like you said, you could see it in real time. I mean, most crashes are normally a millisecond ahead of what you can see, and then you see the impact of it. But this one, you could see it happening as you were watching it, which is just so strange. And the rear tire just gave out on him in such a weird position as well, because it wasn't fully on the entry to the corner and it wasn't fully on the exit of the corner either. It was like a really weird 1 in a million spot of the turn where it just gave way for no apparent reason. But I do think if I had to hedge my bets and give my best guess as to why Pecco did it, I think he maybe slightly overshot the entry to the corner, trying to keep up with Fabio. I mean, even though the Ducati turns way better, it still can't corner the way that the Yamaha does, especially Fabio's Yamaha. And I think Pecco was so desperate to get ahead of Fabio that he tried to copy his racing line. And I think he just completely overshot it, tried to get it back, and the bike wouldn't let him. That's just my guess. That's all I can speculate on. But it's ended up costing him massively. It's ended up costing him, I think it cost him potentially 20 points, because I don't think he would have won anyway. I just think Fabio was too good for everybody on the track today. But when you're throwing away potential second, third, even fourth places that can help you win a title, it's maybe the sign that you're not ready to win the title yet, because Fabio's realized that it's okay to finish second. It's okay to finish third. It's much more important to bank the points and move on to the next race than go all out trying to stupidly win the unwinnable. And I think with Pecco, his ego got a little bit ahead of him today, and that's what cost him. But it is what it is. He's going to have to move on from it. And I don't think it's completely impossible that he comes back, but I do think that's the championship season over for him. I think there's Ducatis that are more consistent now, which is a problem. And I think there's other riders, like especially Aprilia as a manufacturer, who we'll get onto later, who are showing much more consistency in every race. And that's going to be a big issue for Pecco. But I mean, at the end of the day, there's not much more you can say about it. I feel sorry for Pecco, but these are his mistakes. He should know at this point that there's no point trying to shoot in on someone else's line and try and win the unwinnable. You have to race your race, take the points, and move on. And even worse now for Pecco, you alluded to this already. We are now going to the worst possible track to try and win points off of Fabio Quartararo, because we're going to Assen next. And if God himself designed a racetrack, he couldn't have designed it any better for a Yamaha. It's a beautiful, flat, open, flowing track, which is one of my favorite on the calendar by a mile. And Fabio is going to be the dominant favorite to win that race. That's another 25 points. That's another deficit between him and Pecco. And overall, I just think Pecco is going to rue this season as the season of missed chances and blown opportunities. I feel sorry for him on a level, don't get me wrong, because the pressure of factory Ducati is tremendous. But at the end of the day, Leo, only he can ride that bike. The team can't ride it for him. The team directors can't ride it for him. Only Francesco Bagnaia can ride that bike. And unfortunately, he just hasn't been as good at it as Fabio Quartararo.
Yeah, and let's hope he learns from it, because it's an area where he has to improve. I thought that it was something that he took away from last season, but I mean, it's easier said than done, but it's possible, as we've seen with many riders, that you can learn how to be consistent. And also maybe it was just the rear tire, that the hard rear tire wasn't necessarily the best choice, because Johann Zarco, there was a point like at the beginning, but towards the middle of the race, like 1/3 down, where he had like 1.3, 1.4 seconds to Fabio, and was in second. And he also has the hard rear tire. So I thought, okay, maybe now it's the time where Johann Zarco can cut a 10th here, a 10th there, and make Fabio's life a little bit more difficult. But he couldn't. And he had, like, what was it, 5 seconds towards the end?
I think it was like 5.7 seconds or something like that. It was a mammoth gap.
Yeah, it's 4.9. So I wasn't necessarily completely wrong.
Well, it was pretty much a 5-second gap.
5 seconds.
Not splitting hairs.
And Fabio took the majority of this 5-second lead towards the end of the race, or like the middle of the race, and this is impressive to me. So yeah, I don't know if the hard wasn't the best option, because Zarco was like in the best position you can, or not the best is the lead, but if Fabio wasn't the lead, Zarco was in the best position to catch him, which was second with a second down and 2/3 of the race left. And he didn't, and Fabio took him to school, so could be. And also, Joan Zarco was very, very aggressive towards Aleix. On, yeah, it's a difficult topic to discuss, because on one hand, it was a very spectacular overtake, and you love to see it, especially in modern MotoGP, where you don't have these close battles anymore, sadly. And on the other hand, this isn't a spot on the track where you should overtake, because it's one of the fastest areas on the track, where you are in the right-hand corner for the first time since whatever, turn 3, I believe. And yeah, you go down the hill. It's extremely dangerous in itself. And Zarco bumped into Aleix, and yeah, he threw caution to the wind and said, okay, either this works, or you crash, or we both crash. And it's difficult, because let's say hypothetically Aleix crashed there, you would have had a real problem with Joan Zarco, and said like, how could you overtake there? And there's this fine line where you want to encourage people to overtake. It would be wrong to penalize him for that, don't get me wrong. But I wouldn't necessarily encourage riders to make overtakes like these, when literally the next corner is one of the overtaking hotspots. I would, yeah, it's like very, very difficult to me, because this easily could have gone wrong in one of the most dangerous areas of the track.
Yeah, you're right. It's a very, when it comes to the Sachsenring, it's a real gray area. Basically, was Johann Zarco right, or was he wrong? I lean towards it being right for a couple of different reasons, most of which you've already outlined. I think with Johann Zarco, he's generally someone you can trust to overtake safely. He's not like, if it was Takaki Nakagami, for example, I think we would have been having a different discussion, both humorously and not, because I don't know if I would trust him to do it safely enough. But to Johann Zarco's credit, he generally doesn't take other people out with him when he tries overtakes, especially the spectacular ones. And what a brilliant overtake it was, by the way. He did bump into Aleix, I do admit, but it was brilliant viewing, I have to say, and he did do a brilliant job of it. Personally, I think the fact that it was the turn just before the turning zone, I think that's what actually made it really good. The fact that it was at an area where you normally wouldn't overtake actually made it better in some respects. Because if we only encourage riders to turn in traditional overtaking areas, then races can become boring and too anticipatory. Riders are just going to hold on to certain areas, and then we're going to expect overtakes in, say, turns 1, 4, 7, 11, and 13. Whereas we want riders who are willing to take the risks and willing to overtake at any opportunity they can safely find. I do agree with you, though. If there had been a crash, I think there would have been a different discussion about this, and Zarco would have been penalized probably heavily. But I think the fact that he was able to pull it off successfully and not endanger his opponent, I actually think that makes it a pretty brilliant overtake. And I thought it was very smart the way he did it as well, going around the outside instead of just going straight through the inside. I actually liked the way Zarco approached it. So I think it's a great question you ask, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts about this as well. But for me, I thought it was okay.
Yeah, it was okay, and the results proved him right. All I'm saying is, was it completely necessary? No. Could have been. Could it have been worse for Aleix? Yes, because I don't believe motorcycle racing should be a contact sport, and you should be able to overtake without having contact, because you're always putting another human being's health on the line. I mean, let's say hypothetically Aleix crashed there. It was a very, very fast section of the track, on the exit of the corner, on the curb, down the hill. Like when he crashes there, he goes through the gravel, and we've seen crashes from Paul Espargaro in Valencia last year, or Jorge Martin in Portimao. Those crashes where you get thrown through the gravel trap usually don't end very well for a rider with multiple broken bones. And yeah, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way while watching it, but I have to admit it was spectacular. The results proved him right, so I wouldn't penalize him for that. I would, maybe if I'm a race direction, I would say, look, Jean, I know you did nothing wrong there, but I wouldn't necessarily advise you to do it again, because this could have been gone wrong easily. And if it had been gone wrong, we would have penalized you. But on the other hand, race direction, penalized racing incidents in Moto3, and dive bombs in MotoGP don't get penalized. And yeah, so it's like the old discussion: is the penalizing system A, consistent, and B, do you want to punish the outcome, or do you want to punish the crime? And I'm not saying by any means that Zarco deserved a long lap or whatever for this, because if you would have penalized him for this, it would discourage people. Yeah, discourage people from trying overtakes, and it's not what we want. But all I'm saying is that I would have expected from a professional motorcycle racer who's a two-time world champion to be able to overtake A without bumping into your opponent and risking his health, because what if he crashed? I mean, that's a very valid question to ask, you know? And yeah, if I'm race direction, I would have probably said to him, hey, look, John, good job. You made the right decision in this moment, but maybe this shouldn't be the standard of overtaking, you know? Because
Yeah,
he was, sorry to interrupt you there. I just would like
no,
to
no, go
add
ahead,
a
go
little
ahead.
thing. When you're on the Sachsenring and you have like these, I believe it was turn 11, the waterfall where you go down the hill, you have like, what is it, 8 turns, 8 left-hand turns. So the right tire is pretty cold. And it's a very fast corner where you go down the hill into turn 12, which is a heavy braking area, heavy in terms of Sachsenring heavy, where you can overtake. And Joan could have set the overtake up where he gained on LH due to his superior corner speed there, and set him up properly to overtake into turn 12. And yeah, he was faster there. LH admitted that he had no pace at all. It was just surviving for him. So I can understand why you would like to get past him. And he was setting the overtake up like on the outside of the left-hand corners. And as soon as the turn, as the turn was there, the track flicked pretty much underneath them, and the right turn was there. He was in a good position to stick the bike up the inside. And like I said, fair to him, good overtake, very spectacular, good job, but it could have gone wrong easily, you know?
Yeah, it could have, and I'm certainly not taking away from that point because it's a very valid point. I mean, like we've said before, the crashes and the fatalities that we've seen justify concern. I'm certainly not saying they don't. The problem is that it's you're kind of damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. There's an equally good argument on either side, and the problem is among many. You've just mentioned there, and you're absolutely correct, is that Johan Zarco is a two-time world champion. Is anybody in race direction qualified to tell him when to overtake and when not to? Because that's the argument Johan Zarco is going to use. He's going to say, now, Johan Zarco is a gentleman. I'm not saying he would be intentionally combative, but he would be justified in doing so. Because someone like Johan Zarco is going to turn around and say, I'm a two-time world champion. I've been doing this for most of my life. Who the hell are you to tell me when to overtake and when not to? And I do think we need to err on the side of caution of telling riders when to do what they know to do and when not to. I think there's a real risk of racing then becoming meaningless and almost without any sort of cause at all. I think, to sort of sum up where I'm coming from in this, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, I think both sides are equally as valid as the other. The problem is that, yes, it's a fast turn. It's the fastest part of the track. It's a 180, 200 mile an hour straight on the track going down into the waterfall section. The problem is, if you're not going to trust someone like Johann Zarco to do that turn and to let him race, then who are you going to trust to do it? That's the problem. And at the end of the day, we're all here and we're all fans of the sport because these guys are the best in the world at what they do. It's like, for example, in to give it the best sort of comparison that I can, in MMA, you don't tell Israel Adesanya when he's allowed to throw an elbow or when he's not to. Or in basketball, for example, no one would tell Michael Jordan when to try and dunk and when not to. At some point, you have to trust the people out in the track to do what they know to do and to do it safely. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying I disagree with that side because I think it's valid, but we do need to allow the riders freedom and conscionability to make the right decision as well before enforcing anything on them. That's just the side that I come from on it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that it would be wrong to penalize him for that because you would discourage overtakes if you consistently enforce penalties for overtakes which are dangerous but where nothing happens. But my problem with the overtake is that they touched. Basically, that's the issue that I have because it could have been gone wrong easily. And for example, we talked about Fabio. He had an overtake where he bumped into Pecco, but I don't see this as an as the same magnitude, if you want to, because it was turn one. Let's say Pecco crashed, it would be a low side. Sucks for him, but he will
Wouldn't
be
be any
healthy.
damage,
It's
basically.
it's different if you're going 200 kilometers an hour down the hill or 100 in turn one. That's basically what I'm saying, and I completely hear you. Completely agree with you that it would be wrong, A, to penalize him, and B, that you have to trust the athletes because everybody on the grid knows the risk. Aleix is there because he wants to be there. Nobody's forcing him. And if Aleix decides that motorcycle racing is too dangerous for him, he will retire. But that, on the other hand, doesn't mean that you can be reckless. And yeah, my only issue is that he touched Aleix, and I don't think this is necessary at this part of the track. And I wouldn't penalize him for that. I would just like have a little talk with him and say, hey, come on, man, you can do better than that.
Yeah, I think if there had been anything further, like even if there had been like a really bad wobble or something, not even just a crash, if there had been a slightly less severe impact, like a Leish losing balance or something like that, then yes, I would pretty much be in agreement with that because people forget how fast and dangerous that part of the track is. I'm certainly not denying that. If there had been a crash, I mean, that would have been horrendous for anybody if there had been a crash because that's the fastest part of the track. But I think the reason, like you said, we're discussing this is because there was contact, albeit brief, and that immediately makes us think of the worst case scenario of what could have been. Thankfully, though, I trust Johan and Aleix to know what to do and to generally race the best that they can. If there'd been a crash, I would have absolutely agreed, and we're probably having a much more serious discussion on this. I think, though, the fact that they're two of the safest riders on the track generally, I trust them, and I think they both handled it exceptionally well. In the moment, of course, on the track. For me, there's nothing much to it. Maybe some more awareness from Johan, yes. But in terms of anybody calling for punishment or anything like that, absolutely not.
Yeah. So I would like to move on to Jack Miller. Sadly, he didn't win the race because the last two riders who got fired, or at least Jorge Lorenzo and Andrea Dovizioso, won their next race after they got fired. Danilo Petrucci not, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, very good race for him with the long lap. Pecco almost took out the other Ducati because apparently there was a little bit of gravel on the long lap. But yeah,
Right.
Jack Miller, very, very decent race. Can't really complain. And yeah, with the other Ducati riders, Martin is very solid after the surgery. He had this nerve damage, and after Catalonia, he got surgery there. So it appears to be better. I don't know, but I believe that we would have known if there was like a major issue, because in these conditions, when you aren't completely fit, you're fucked. And that's why guys like Aleix cycle 300 kilometers a day, and Fabio runs every morning. You have to be fit in order to race in these conditions, and that's why they're professional athletes. And yeah, I wouldn't necessarily go into detail with every Ducati rider, because it would just blow up in our faces and we would sit here tomorrow. So quickly, Marini, he was very impressive. It's like 3 top 6 finishes. Very good. To all the people who say he's just there because of his brother, maybe you're partly right. Maybe he kind of proves you wrong, and you should more look at Alex Marquez. Wink, wink. And yeah, he's developing very, very good, and this shows to me why it's important to give rookies at least 2 or 3 seasons, because he was a title contender in Moto2. He earned his spot in MotoGP. Last year he was very consistent, but wasn't very fast. But he showed some promise towards the end, but it wasn't necessarily the most spectacular rookie season. Which is very spectacular to me, is that he finished every race. He never DNF'd once. And this is important, for yourself as a rider, because it sucks to crash, and there's always this big risk of injury. And also you get a lot of time on the bike, which is in MotoGP pretty limited, and you can improve better when you are on the bike. And yeah, so yeah, congratulations to him. He shows promise, and very good. Excited to see him in the future. And yeah, Bastianini disappoints. His crew chief wasn't there with COVID. I mean, he had a good race considering where he came from, but a rider who has aspirations to go into the factory team needs to be in the top 5, period. I mean, Martin wasn't too, so what are we talking about? But yeah, Enea needs to do better, but that's just his season. He's very inconsistent. Either he wins or he crashes or he's nowhere. It's not like he's somebody who's on the podium occasionally and in the top 5 occasionally and wins a race occasionally. He's either brilliant or he's yeah, not so good.
Yeah, I'll just say a quick word about them before we move on. Luca Marini's opportunity in the Premier class may have come a little bit quicker because of Valentino. I admit that, but he's staying there on his own merit, and he is bloody brilliant on that bike as well, might I add. Like you said, he's finished every single race, which is a credit to him. And to get P5 today, I think is genuinely fantastic. I think it's a brilliant result for Marini and that VR46 team as well. Shout out Marco Bezzecchi, P11 as well. Thought he had a good race as well, considering where he came from. Yeah, Marini's maturing and developing brilliantly, and it is everything you just said. You have to give rookies time on the bike for them to get better. There is no other way. It's not like a magic beanstalk where you can just water it and you wake up one morning and you have a world champion rider. You've got to give them time and let them ride the thing. And Marini's been in the Premier class now for what, 2-3 seasons, and he is really starting to 2 seasons, yes. His first season he struggled because Marini's a bit like me. He's really tall, so he was struggling to get to grips with the bike. It felt really awkward, and he was kind of slow, as you said. But this year, he looks so much better. And this is what happens when you give guys time on the bike. They mold around it, they develop around it. It's like, I think Raul and Remy, the same will apply to them if they're given more time, which I absolutely think they should. So overall, massive congrats to Luca Marini. As for Enea Bastianini, it's like you said, Leo. He's either win it or bin it. That's pretty much him. He's one or he's the other. Um, Overall, I thought he did well to get back to P10 from P14, P15. He managed to stay in the bike, get a top 10, and that's good. But if you want to be factory Ducati, like you said, you've really got to be top five every single race. And he just isn't at the moment. So it's interesting to see where he goes from there. But big congrats to Luca Marini.
Yeah. Regarding Remy and Raoul, I would like to add a little sentence. Which is that to me it's embarrassing for KTM that there are even talks that Remy and Raoul won't keep their seat, because they are amazing. You know, I love Remy. You know, I have my problems with Raoul because of his antics off track and how he handled the whole championship situation last year. But this motherfucker can race. And Marini is literally the best example. You need to give those people time. Aprilia did it with Maverick. Like, okay, Maverick has a lot more experience, but you could have argued, okay, you had like a little bit last year, and this year wasn't necessarily the most successful time of Maverick Vinales with Aprilia, but he's getting into his own. Maverick had a brilliant race, and I like Aprilia because they give their riders what they deserve. Maverick deserves another 2 seasons because he's one of the most talented riders on the grid. And if he can put it together, which he did today, I mean, it sucked for him that the rear ride height device got stuck, but he wasn't actually mad because he was so happy that he was competing for a podium. And I believe that if he didn't had this issue, that he would have been on the podium, because Aleix had no pace, and he seemed all the time that he was faster than him. And honestly, I don't see Jack Miller catching up to Maverick when he passes him. And overtaking is another. You can catch up to somebody, but to overtake somebody then is another challenge in itself, especially on the Sachsenring, especially in modern MotoGP, you know? So I actually believe that Maverick would have been on the podium, and yeah, he didn't. Suck for him. It could have happened in any race, and it happened in his best race. Very sad, but to take away the positives, he was competing for a podium. He should be better in Assen, a track that historically suits him. I was there in 2019, attended the race live, where he beat Marc Marquez for the victory on the Yamaha in Marc Marquez's best season. I mean, Assen isn't necessarily his best track, but yeah, Maverick is good there. That's all I want to say. Last year he was second, I believe, and it's positive for him. And who would have thought last year that Maverick made the best decision of his career by over revving the Yamaha and getting the fuck out of there? Imagine him being another year on this shitty bike. Let the other riders have the problem with this piece of shit, and let Maverick enjoy his time at Aprilia, because he seems happy. He seems um, like he's making progress, and it seems like he's a good team player, because on the broadcast, Simon Crafer said that the rear right height device is basically a manual one, where Aleix has it on the bike and has to press a button for the rear to come down, and Maverick is testing an automatic one. So basically he's sacrificing his own race, because it's still a developmental job just to improve the bike, which is I rate really highly, because he could have just said, no, I want the same that Aleix, I want to beat him, fuck you. But he didn't. He's a team player. He understands that Aleix is fighting for a championship, and he's not. And he understands that this will benefit him in the long term. So yeah, very happy for Maverick. I mean, very, very, very impressive race, and it makes me happy to see him come into his own. Because he's a very talented rider, and it hurts to see such a talent getting wasted. Thanks, Yamaha. And the second part is that I'm happy for Aprilia, I'm happy for Aleix, and him personally too, because he seems like a very nice guy.
Yeah, couldn't agree anymore, and that is the truth. I thought Aprilia overall had a fantastic weekend, and what a campaign they're having, by the way. I'm delighted for Massimo Rivola and that whole team because they are doing brilliantly and they deserve a hell of a lot of credit for the job they're doing. I'm going to talk about Maverick first because I think that makes the most sense to pick up where you left off. I'm delighted to see him happy again. I can't remember the last time I saw Maverick Vinales truly beaming with a smile on his face. And it's clear that he loves Aprilia and he loves being there and he loves being teammates with Alicia Spargaro. And you're right about the race as well. He was brilliant and he was on podium pace. I don't think Miller or Elish would have touched him if he'd have stayed on the track. But as you said about the rear height device, unfortunately, it did crap out on him, and that's what cost him the race. From what I understand, it's very similar to what you said. Apparently, Aprilia are developing a semi-automatic rear height device, and that's what Maverick had in his bike, as opposed to the manual on Alicia's bike, and that's of course what went on him. But credit to him, he was brilliant, and I don't think I've ever seen somebody who had to pull into the pits and actually look at peace with themselves. And Maverick did. It speaks a lot to the Aprilia project and the people around him, but I'm delighted for him. I mean, we climbed around a lot at the beginning of the season with Maverick, but that's only because we knew how good he is and the potential that he has. And from Assen onwards, I can see that podium prediction form that you said really starting to come to fruition, because his confidence is as high as I've ever seen it. And like you said as well, even on the if he'd have had to spend one more year in the Yamaha, he probably would have done a repeat of Austria, but he would have finished the job and just joined the bike in the fence with it. But thankfully, that's not happening. We're staying positive over here. And overall, I'm really, really happy for Maverick Vinales. He seems happy. He's doing great work on his bike. And yeah, congratulations to him, and congrats to Aleix as well for the P4. He had a great weekend all around. My only concern for Alicia Spargaro, though, whilst we're on the topic, is this. He's slowing up traffic when he gets into P2 or P3, and he needs to start pushing the pace a little bit more. Whenever Fabio was out in front and Alicia was in second, the gap to Fabio was starting to open and open and open and open. And that I actually think that's what led to Zarco doing the move that he did on Aleix. I think the frustration was building with Aleix not pushing on and actually going quicker. That's literally my only criticism of Aleix. I think when he finds himself in these positions of P2, P3, push onwards and explore that pace more, because you have the pace to do it. I think Aleix is a little bit too conservative, but when he loses that, he will win more races. But overall, congrats to Aprilia.
Yeah, I mean, two things. First, my podium prediction was that Aleix wins a race and Maverick doesn't score a podium. So he kind of almost proved me wrong, but
thank God he didn't finish.
State, no, I hope he proves me wrong. But State now, I'm happy. I'm correct, and but I'm happy if he scores a podium because I like the guy. And yeah, regarding Aleix, I mean, if he said after the race that basically he was trying to not crash all the time during the whole race because it was so difficult for him. And what do you want him to do? Push and crash, or be conservative and hold up maybe traffic, which isn't his business. It's his pace. If you want to go faster, overtake him. But
well, Zarco did.
Yeah, but please do it safely. But yeah, I mean, what do you want him to do? Crash? I mean, if this is his pace, it's his pace. And because of his approach, he's second in the world championship. It is what it is. And if the pace is there, we've seen that he's willing to push. He did it in Jerez, for example. He did it in here in Argentina, and he kind of did it in Barcelona. So why not? I mean, I don't see the issue. And yeah, I mean, the Aprilia in general, I believe, has an overtaking problem because it seemed to me that Maverick was faster the whole time, but he couldn't get past Aleix. There were many occasions where Aleix couldn't get past pass other riders in previous races. So maybe, first of all, yes, everybody has these issues. That's the big issue in MotoGP right now. But it seems like Aprilia has it a little bit more than, for example, Fabio, because Fabio is, yes, he's very aggressive and he pushes his Yamaha to the limits, but he overtakes people more regularly, I would say, than the Aprilia. So this is maybe something they have to get fixed. But I mean, he's second in the world championship. He picked up another very valuable fourth position, because it was easy to crash, or it was easy to DNF. So yeah, I wouldn't criticize him for this. And yeah, moving on, I would like to talk about Honda, because Honda had a rather strange weekend, because they came to the track where they won the last, what was it, 10 races? Or 11 or
Actually,
whatever.
the last 12 or so, because Danny Pedrosa won two of them as well as Mark.
Yeah, but they won a little bit there. So that's all I'm trying to say. And Marc Marquez wasn't there, obviously. And the question is, would he win if he was there? Because the Honda has some big problems with two things: A, front end feeling, and B, in the heat, the bike doesn't work at all. And you need front end feeling at the Sachsenring. And it was fucking hot. So I don't necessarily know if Marc Marquez would have been able to compete with Fabio. Maybe he would have, who knows? I mean, if somebody can win at the Sachsenring, it's Marc Marquez. So yeah, but that's a hypothetical discussion. But I want to get to the point of Paul. He had some pain with the ribs, and he said he was feeling dizzy and pulled up into the pits, because it's better to give up than to crash and injure yourself even more. And Alex Marquez had a technical issue with the rear device too, I believe. So he had to give up as well. Tucker crashed. Okay, it's Tucker, and it's, yeah, you know. We discussed this last time out after Barcelona. He is on his way to become the Honda test rider, in my opinion, because the Honda test rider didn't crash, yes, but I've heard, there's no actual confirmation because I don't have the lap times in front of me, and I didn't have the time to check, that there were some laps that Stefan Bradl did which were slower than the Moto2. If this is indeed true, this is a disaster. And he said that it was simply too hot. He burned his foot, he burned his hand, and he thought of giving up because there was no point there. And I would have agreed if it was any other rider than Stefan Bradl, because he's literally the test rider. You don't need to be there to finish in the top 10. You need to be there to develop the shitty bike, and you only can develop it if you ride it. So good decision to stay on the bike and finish the race, even it was rather difficult for him. But yeah, it was a very, very strange weekend for Honda, because they had 3 DNFs, with 2 being technical injury and crash. I don't know. It was rather strange, you know. And Stefan Bradl, the only one who finished, didn't score a point and was like, what was he, 20 seconds behind Remy or whatever? Let me check. Yeah, he was 22 seconds behind Remy, and yeah. So Remy was right behind Andrea Dovizioso and Frankie Morbidelli. So basically he was 30 seconds off the group in front, pushing for the last points. So yeah, Honda is a disaster right now. And I don't know what they can do, but yeah, it's very, very strange. It's kind of funny because Honda is pretty arrogant because of all of their success. So yeah, sucks when Marcus doesn't bail you out. But they also said that the bike has a lot of potential. They just need to unlock the potential. Yeah, KTM has a lot of potential as well, but still the bike's a piece of shit. So yeah, I don't know what's going on in Honda. It was a really strange weekend, and they have to fix the front end feeling, because basically you need to have front end feeling to be good, and you need to make your bike work in the hotter conditions, because literally half the season is during the summer.
I'll tell you what, Honda are going to kick themselves when they find out about global warming and seasons, Leo. I mean, Jesus Christ, how does your bike not work in half of the normal weather conditions? What is going on? But yeah, you make a really good point. Obviously, with Honda, they are in a mess right now. And I actually have the second funny statistic of the episode for you. That is right. Yes, I do. Usually you get one every 2 or 3 episodes. This episode, you get 2 in 1. That's kind of how we roll here. This is the first time that Honda have not scored a single point in a Grand Prix race since 1982. That is how long it has been since the Honda team have not scored a single point in a Grand Prix race. Shout out Everything Moto Racing for the statistic. They posted it earlier, but it is shocking. It really is. That is about 17,000 days in between 1982 and 2022, which is what, 82, 92, 30 years since you last didn't score a point in a race. The point that I'm making with this, Lee, is that Honda are in shit. They are in deep, deep, deep shit, basically. You know, I don't even know where to start with Honda. You know, Alex Marquez DNF'd again. Nakagami DNF'd again. Paulo Spargo has a little bit of an excuse because he had that horrible high side on Friday. You know, he's got a rib injury. I can forgive that because that was a horrible crash that he went through, and he went rolling through the gravel trap. You know, how he even got up is impressive. But what concerns me the most is actually the one rider who actually managed to finish the race, which is, of course, Stefan Bradl. Stefan Bradl, during that race, because I was, of course, watching the BT broadcast earlier, there was a lap, I can't remember, I think it was around lap 10, and the commentary team said that Stefan Bradl was running 124s, which is Moto 2 times at that track today. That is beyond unforgivable, no matter what way you slice it. And towards the end of last season, or around halfway through, I remember there was a race, I think it was Le Mans in the wet, where Valentino was doing World Superbike level times and people were ripping him for it. Why aren't they ripping Honda for this? Because that is unacceptable, regardless of who is on that bike. I mean, Stefan Bradl is a world champion. He's that caliber rider. And to finish 22 seconds behind a rookie, an injured rookie at that, it's unforgivable, Leo. It really, really is. And these are the people, you know, this is the Honda Racing Corporation. These are the people who think they're the best thing ever. These are the people who were so narrow-minded that they didn't put in any fail-safe in case Marc Marquez might get injured. What Marc Marquez's injuries have shown are the massive cracks and fault lines in HRC, because there's not one rider there good enough to pick up any of the slack at all. And don't get me wrong, I don't criticize Alex Marquez or anything, but realistically, like we said last episode, he's there because of Mark. Let's just be truthful about it. He was bumped up into Repsol way too early. He's not deserving of being in the LCR team. Nakagami's on his way out. Paul has just had a bit of a really tough spell ever since he's been at Honda. And overall, they're in massive, massive trouble. They might have to get a wild card from World Superbike to try and get any kind of traction. And that tells you how bad they are in it, Leo. I'm serious. I mean, they might have to get an Iker Lecuona or someone like that to try and get some momentum on the board, because their MotoGP boys just are not doing the business at all.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to expect from Iker? I mean, he hasn't ridden the bike ever to get in there and be fast.
I trust him over
spot on.
Bradl.
But no, Honda has been in the shit for I would say like the last 5 to 6 years,
Yes.
because take out Marc Marquez. When was the last time Danny Pedrosa was really competitive? When was the last time that any customer Honda was really competitive? I mean, Cal Crutchlow had like a couple of good races, but necessarily it was occasionally, let's say, occasionally good. But yeah, Honda has been in the shit since like 5 or 6 years when you take out Marc Marquez. And from the moment you took him out because he was injured, they were fucking bad. So yeah, and I mean, Alex Marquez, he is a 2-time world champion. He got promoted to Repsol as the reigning Moto2 world champion, which was fine to me at the time, and he did a really good job. But the inability to A, develop, and B, the inability of Honda to develop him a bike which works for him and every other riders is basically a disaster. If you're the biggest motorcycle manufacturer in the world, you're the most successful historically, and you can't even build a motorcycle which beats a KTM, what are we doing? I mean, the Moto2 race had like 2 laps less than the MotoGP race, probably. I don't know. Yeah, and it would be interesting to see how fast Raul Fernandez over the race distance in MotoGP would have been. So if you put like 2 or 3 laps on his time, where would he finish? Would he finished above Stefan Bradl or behind? And if indeed he would have finished above, this is maybe some kind of calculation I can do tomorrow or whatever. So yeah. If he indeed would have finished ahead of Stefan Bradl, this would be a disaster. It would be embarrassing. Basically, just kill yourself at this point, because you ain't cutting it, you know? This is fucking embarrassing, because you can compare these 2 races because they literally happened at the same track at the same time, like 1.5 hours apart. The conditions can't be more similar, you know? And yeah.
Yeah, it's the perfect controlled science experiment. It's the same conditions, the same track, the same weather. You know, it's not like we were in Le Mans where the weather can change from 1 minute to the next. The temperature was practically exactly the same for each race. There's no excuse. And I mean, I don't know if I go so far necessarily as telling Honda they should kill themselves, but they're not far off. They really aren't. They are at a point where they are cataclysmically deep in trouble. They really are. And the thing is that it's not even necessarily that they're in trouble with Mark being injured, which they are. It's that they don't have anybody else to turn to. They've kind of exhausted all their options. Bradl, nowhere in this planet near the pace. Alex Marquez hasn't been good enough. Paul hasn't either. And Nakagami has not been good enough either. I mean, all he's done is injured Alex Rins and DNF Pecco Bagnaia out of a race. Honda have got to get it together, or they're going to be in massive trouble for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, if you have 3 relationships over a period of time and all 3 girls break up with you, maybe you should start to consider you're the problem. Same with Honda. Is Paul really the problem? Is Alex Marquez really the problem? Is Taka Nakagami really the problem? Or maybe Honda is the problem. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I think the problem with Honda is that they're almost too proud to look at themselves and admit that they have not done this the way that they should have. I mean, guys like Alberto Puig are really good team leads, and they're excellent mechanics and they know what they're doing, but they're very proud, and they're not proud in a good way. They're proud to the point that they will not admit where they've made a mistake, and they'll try and bury themselves deeper to fix it. For the love of God, make it to the end of this season and actually recruit someone who can at least pick up the slack from where Mark is and finish a race relatively well. Because Honda are looking even worse than KTM at the moment, and that's a shocking statement to have to make.
I disagree on the point that Honda is too arrogant, because the fact that they radically changed the bike from last year to this year, and the development of the bike has been in progress. So basically, I would say like 2020, they admitted, okay, this is not going well and we need to change the things. And the fact that they have this new bike is kind of proves you wrong, I believe. That Honda admitted that they had made a mistake and that they can't rely on Marc Marquez only. The problem is that they are incapable of developing a bike, which is the bigger concern for me. Because when you would have said to me, like, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, Honda will develop a completely new bike, will it be competitive? I would say yes, because it's Honda. They know what they do, but it isn't. I don't know what's going on, but it is fucking garbage. And if you develop a bike for like 2 years, because there were some tests where Stefan Bradl was testing the new Honda last year, even though they still ran the old Honda, obviously. When you develop a bike for such a long period with the amount of resources and the amount of data that Honda has, and you present this piece of shit, which only worked in Qatar, yeah, then you have you fucked up. And this is embarrassing for me because they admitted that they're wrong, but they can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more to say. I really don't. I mean, fair enough. Let's say that they have admitted that they were wrong and they've started to build a new bike, which, to be fair, they have. The problem is you haven't gone any further from my Honda haven't gone any further from my criticism of them. You've made a bike that's different from the one Marc Marquez likes. And now you've made a bike that, yes, maybe other people can ride, but it breaks down half the time. What is the point? I mean, even when Honda moved to the side, they can't get it right. Maybe they need personnel changes at HRC because whoever is making the decisions are not getting it right. They keep messing it up every time they try to do it. One way or the other, in the next few years, you have to look at life post Marc Marquez, whether that's from a crash, whether it's his age retiring, whatever it is, you have to start looking beyond the narrow focus of having a bike that only Mark can ride and no one else can ride. You've got to develop a properly stable bike and get the right riders in. If you only have one and not the other, you're not going to get anywhere. Because right now you've got a bike that's breaking down in half the conditions, and you've got 3 riders that I don't think are the right riders for your team. Scrap them, get the right riders, build a proper decent bike, Honda. We know you're capable of it. You gave us a V5 not that long ago. You gave us a piece of mastery, which I would like to see back actually, but that's not the point. You're capable of building good bikes. Now get your asses back to Japan and do it.
Yeah. I mean, moving on to Suzuki, they have a really good bike, unlike Honda, but they still managed to fuck it up since basically every race. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember that Suzuki finished a race in the points in Le Mans. In Le Mans, for sure, both of them crashed. I don't exactly remember what Joan Mir did in Mugello and in Catalonia, because Joan Mir is like the most unspectacular rider ever. If he would have worked in a normal job, he would be like an insurance salesman, because he's that average. I mean, I don't really know what the guy is doing, and to no fault of his own, but he isn't anywhere on my radar. And yeah, but I can't remember if he scored points in Mugello and in Catalonia, but let's say he did. I don't know. It's still a very miserable series since the announcement, because they came to Europe as one of the title favorites and now they're nowhere. I mean, Takaka Nakagami has his fair share of this, But yeah, it's a disaster. I feel sorry for everybody at the team because it's not really their fault, but they're basically off since the announcement. It is what it is, but they are only humans. And imagine you try to be a high performance worker in an extremely competitive environment where you know for a fact that next year you won't have a job.
Yeah, it's a really, really shit state of mind to have to be in, it must be said. To answer your pop quiz about Joan Mir, he managed to finish fourth in Catalonia, but DNF'd at Mugello. So
Okay.
that would completely explain why no one can remember his result. I mean, I gotta be honest, I like Joan Mir a lot. I think he's a generally stable rider, but Jesus, he is uninspiring. You know, his favorite color is probably gray. You know, he is drab, Leo. I mean, it is a fair point to be made. And the problem is he's just, you know, I don't know what to say about Joan Mir. I mean, yes, he is a world champion. He did it what I call the Nicky Hayden route in winning it through consistency rather than spectacular wins. A valid method, but not the most spectacular one, probably befitting of Joan Mir. But I don't really know what to say about him. I mean, obviously, it was unfortunate that Alex Rins couldn't race. Obviously, the pain in his hand was just too much. Understandable, but it is what it is. With Joan Mir, I just don't know. I mean, if you're Joan Mir, you're racing literally for your career here because, like you said, you know, you're racing in a team that you know definitively is not going to be there next season. I mean, these are the races where you put the pedal to the metal and you push for the best results that you can. And like you said, I mean, I love the insurance salesman point. That's just cracking me up. But he is unspectacular. It is the truth. And it's not even that he's unspectacular where he can afford to be unspectacular. He's unspectacular where he needs to start doing something. He needs to be grabbing attention because both him and Alex Rins need a new seat for next season. And he's been so uninspiring that he's just not doing himself any favors. And I mean, finishing, you know, completely in the wilderness again is only hurting him more than anybody. It's not hurting Suzuki because they're not going to be there anymore. But he's got to start doing something because you know, have a spectacular crash if you need to. You know, get a long lap penalty. Do something, Joan, but don't just, you know, tittle around on the bike doing nothing. We need to start seeing some sign of life here. Yeah, overall, I just agree with you. I mean, the guy's a world champion, but he's not inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks volume to Joan Mir that he finishes fourth in his home race, a very, very good position, but nobody remembers that he did. And it was just unspectacular. He was fourth, okay, but let's say Maverick finished fourth. Everybody would have remembered, you know, or Mark Marquez would have finished fourth or whatever, you know. It's
He's
just
the
because,
James Milner of MotoGP. He's
yeah,
boring as hell.
yeah. I mean, if he would have been a position, you would give him, he would be sixth. It's decent, it's okay, but yeah, it's like basically his position. Give him sixth. Nobody will fire you if you finish sixth in every race, but nobody will sign $1 million sponsorship deals and say you're the best rider in the world. You're so crazy. Nobody will make Instagram reels of your performances if Dorna would have allowed us to take his videos or their videos. And yeah, so actually I have a little dog right now between my legs who wants to join.
Oh,
You,
nice.
oh, yeah.
At least it's more exciting than Joan's race.
Oh, you
Oh,
want to say hello?
ladies and gentlemen, the dog of the Bad MotoGP podcast.
Yeah, I mean the dog probably is more spectacular than Joan Mir.
Yeah, he looks more exciting than Joan. At least he looks happy about it.
Yeah. Okay, goodbye. I mean, it's like the second dog appearance on the podcast now. We had Remy's dog Bella, when we were in Barcelona. So she joined us when we talked about KTM, which was kind of funny. If you haven't seen it, she's a very, very good girl, very, very sweet.
Go watch
And
it.
yeah, now we have the second. Peanut is now here on the podcast. Yeah, but yeah, back to Joan Mir. Just average. I don't know what to say. I wouldn't if I'm Repsol Honda, I wouldn't sign him. I would keep Paul rather, because Paul at least can be spectacular. Yeah, but let's not start this discussion, because we previously talked about the silly season episode, and it will come. We teased it already,
Twice.
now more than twice, 10 times, I believe. Was like it's up in the air since like Jerez, basically, or maybe even Portimao. I don't know. But yeah, I believe the big one was the Suzuki announcement. After that, it was just up in the air, because what do you do with Alex Rins and Joan Mir? But yeah, yeah, let's talk about KTM, because Joan Mir is unspectacular and inconsistent. Brad Binder actually is unspectacular but consistent. And consistent, yeah. Because he's now 5th in the World Championship. How the fuck is this possible? I mean, he's riding, in my opinion, the worst bike on the grid. Basically never makes it out of Q2, and now has 80 points after 10 races, which means on average he finishes 8th, which is the unspectacular Joan Mir on a worse bike. But yeah, he's doing incredible, because he's riding a scooter basically. He fights through the pack, but Dorna doesn't show it on TV, so who would have known? But yeah, it's a solid race, and for Oliveira too. The sad thing still is KTM almost won there last year with Miguel Oliveira. They almost beat Marc Marquez at his best track. And yeah, now they're nowhere to be found. There were still all-time lap records being set, and KTM was slower. I mean, Oliveira at least was, I believe, 3/10 slower in the qualifying. Brad Binder was like 2/10 faster. So basically, they didn't develop anything, while everybody else was getting faster. And that's the big problem with KTM, that they're developing backwards when everybody else is moving forward. But yeah, still a solid race. You can't blame the riders for it. KTM, we discussed this on a show previously too. I don't know if the frame is necessarily the best one, even though Joel Kelso on the podcast with me last week, or what was, yeah, I believe uploaded this last week. He talked about the KTM frame, and he said it's basically an aluminum frame where it looks like a steel frame. Go watch it and check it out. So it has for sure aluminum parts in it as well, if you look behind the curtain. But I don't know to which extent. I don't know, nothing basically. But yeah, KTM, they have some big problems that they need to fix, and they need to find a solution ASAP, because it's embarrassing, A, and B, you're losing probably Rolf Fernandez, which is one of the best riders to come up to MotoGP in quite some time, because
If not ever.
look, yeah, not ever. I mean, you still have like a Marc Marquez, yeah, but he is fucking good. That's all I want to say. And you're probably losing him. And yeah, once again, another topic for the episode about the silly season. But yeah, factory boys, solid weekend, and also the rookies. I mean, take out Stefan Bradl, because he's a test rider and doesn't necessarily belong there, in my opinion. I mean, doesn't belong in the MotoGP grid as a full-time racer. Let him be a test rider. Okay, he's not good at that either, but let him be. Yeah, basically what I want to say is that Remy finished last if you take out Stefan Bradl, but still managed to get 1 point, which speaks to the difficulty of the race because everybody crashed or had some technical issues. And Raul had actually a very, very good race. He finished 12th, I believe. He was making some good progress. And it's like we discussed with Luca Marini. As a rookie, in my opinion, you don't have to be spectacular. You have to get accustomed to the new category, and you have to collect data for you to be comfortable on the bike, to say, okay, I need to improve there, I need to do this better. Just collect as much data as you can for you and for your team and stay on the fucking bike. And they both did it. It's great. And yeah, I mean, they're still riding a KTM, so I wouldn't necessarily expect him or both of them to compete for top 10th, maybe sometime when everything goes well, but for top 5 podiums, never. You could argue that Marco Bezzecchi could do that at some point of the season, and he already did in Mugello. I mean, give him a good bike and he will produce. And we all know, based on last season, that Remy and Raul are head and shoulders above Marco Bezzecchi. So yeah, but still, rookie solid, factory rider solid. I have nothing to complain there, except that KTM needs to develop a bike which actually works. But yeah, it's okay. It's a Joan Mir kind of performance, you know. You do good, but you're not spectacular. And what was rather interesting, that Dorna decided to show a little bit more of the coverage, what happens like behind the top 8, which was good to see, because it was nice to see somebody else. They even showed Stefan Bradl for an extended period of time on the podcast. But yeah, the race in itself was so boring that Dorna decided to give them a little bit of TV time. I would like to see it when there's actually something happening at the back. I mean, like Qatar's the best example with the 4-way rookie battle, which wasn't shown at all on the broadcast. Or Barcelona last time out, they had a great battle towards the end. We don't see it at all. At least they showed a little bit. Yeah, would be nice if actually something happened there, but it's not Dorna's fault, I guess, to an extent, because they made the rules, which are shitty. But yeah, solid solid race for KTM. Anything to add there?
Not overly. I mean, the KTM bike is a bit like a dinghy on wheels. Just uninspiring and all around not that great. Credit to Brad Binder and Miguel Oliveira, though, 7th and 9th. Better results than they've been having recently, for the most part. I mean, Brad Binder is a bit like that one person who shows up at a party and nobody knows who they are or how they got there, but they accept that they're there and they just go on about their business. I mean, he is kind of like a meerkat. He just shows up out of nowhere and everybody just accepts it. I'm not against it because I like Brad Binder, but I mean, again, it is strange. I mean, the fact that he is 5th overall in the title standings is mind-blowing to me, because it was you that pointed it out earlier, and I thought, surely it's Jorge Martin or even, someone like that, maybe an Oliveira, at a push. But no, it's Brad Binder, and I don't understand how he got there. I don't understand what he's doing, but fair enough, it is what it is. As for Messrs. Gardner and Fernandez, I think they're doing about as good as they can. Yes, Remy finished last, but it's a point. It is something. And he stayed on his bike, which is more than could be said for many riders more experienced than him in tougher conditions as well. So I think they both deserve a lot of credit. Raul deserves a lot of credit, 4 points. I mean, he was about 2.5 seconds off Marco Bezzecchi, who is a great rider. And I think they both deserve a lot of credit. Nothing more really to add.
Yeah, so the whole racing was boring. I touched on it briefly. I actually had some hope then that we could get a nice race at the Sachsenring, because Marc Marquez wasn't there to dominate. But it still was as boring as it was with him. So this was rather disappointing, especially after the banging Moto2 race. So yeah, I had some time today to fill out the survey. I put it on my Instagram story for everybody who would like to read it. It should be up there until like tomorrow afternoon or whatever. Yeah, or midday. I don't know.
It's up there. That's the
yeah,
point.
just look at it. Maybe
Go
I'll
and
put
look
it.
at it.
Maybe I'll put it in my story highlight. I don't know. Yeah, but basically the point of it that the racing is basically killed. We have a very competitive grid where we can't see overtakes because of the front tire. I mean, yes, it's part. Yes, it's part winglets. It's part front and rear rider devices. Okay, I get that. But also Michelin. What the fuck? Please develop a bike or not a bike. I'm sorry. Please develop a tire which works above 30 degrees temperature and which works when you're following another rider. This would be great. But yeah, I would like to see somebody pulling up with a flex and flexing all the winglets down because it gets rather annoying by now. I'm a big racing fan. I watched Formula One a lot as a kid. I mean, I grew up with Sebastian Vettel basically dominating, and I remember one of the first seasons I can truly remember was like the 2006 or 5 season where Fernando Alonso beat Michael Schumacher. Was a good one, but yeah, I lost interest in the sport because it's fucking boring. I watched a little bit during the pandemic because there was nothing on there. But generally, I'm kind of interested in Formula One, but not anymore because it's just it's not my cup of tea to see no overtakes. And yeah, but long story short, I would hope that MotoGP doesn't turn into Formula One, because even Formula One realized that they have a problem and changed the regulations. And MotoGP needs to do this too, because it's not unwatchable. It's still MotoGP. You get excited, but try to convince like a friend of yours to watch a MotoGP race with you. Say, hey man, I got this cool new sport, and you should definitely watch it. Come over, and then you see the Sachsenring race. I mean, if you're lucky, you get to see a funny Moto3 race where there's absolute carnage, or a Moto2 race like today, which was amazing, because motorcycle racing in general has the potential to be super exciting, but yet MotoGP isn't at the moment, which is a big problem for me. And like when you want to get your friends to watch the UFC, it's pretty easy to convince them, because I did it with my girlfriend, who has no.
I know where you're going with this. I know where
Yeah.
you're going with this.
Yeah, I mean, she has no background in martial arts or whatever. So, but I like to watch it, so she watched it a couple times with me, and it's one of our favorite things to do. We still get to watch the fight night from yesterday.
Oh, fucking
But
epic, by the way.
yeah, was it? So
Oh.
please no spoilers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but
just that you will love it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, the point I'm making is, if you want to get your friends to watch the UFC, you show them a fight like Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Potstingsbums.
Prohajka.
Yeah, you know. Or like or like the first Whaley versus Joanna, or the first Usman versus Calvin. There's so many amazing fights. You see spectacular knockouts, you see spectacular submissions, you see very high class fighting. And in MotoGP, you basically see high class racing, yes, because they're the best in the world. But to me, as a fan, I don't fucking care if they lap the Sachsenring in 119.7 or in 123.4. I want to see exciting races. And there was a story that the MotoGP, or a video that the MotoGP social media team put up, where Sette Gibernau and Valentino Rossi battled in the last lap for the race win. And there were like 3 overtakes in the last 2 corners or something like this. This is what I want to see. I don't care if they're 5 seconds faster or slower per lap. I rather watch Moto3 at this point than MotoGP, which is a big problem. And I mean, I still watch it because I grew up with watching MotoGP. I basically never done anything differently in my life. I got through the whole 800cc era, so I will get through this too. But yeah, the point I'm making is that it's very difficult, A, to attract new fans, and B, to keep existing fans if you put like snoozes up like today, which is a big problem. So please do something about it, Dorna.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, I have to say. And I think Marco Melandri was involved in that race you're talking about as well, with Gibernau and Rossi,
I
if I'm
believe
not
it
wrong.
was 2003. Rossi was still on the Honda, I believe, if I remember correctly.
I
And
think I'm thinking of a different one then.
yeah, it
Oh,
could
fair
be, I
enough.
don't know.
Yeah, but the point that you're making overall is incredibly valid, and I do agree with you. And I would like to refer the people who watch this show to my previous argument from a few episodes ago. Take all the funding for aero development, wings, winglets, all that ugly crap, throw it out the window and put it into having different tire manufacturers. I understand that technological development is a part of life. It is what it is, and you can't hold it off forever. But I don't want fighter jets on the track that can't overtake each other, because then it becomes F1 where whoever qualifies on pole wins the race, whoever qualifies second finishes second, and so on and so forth. And it becomes boring and it becomes dull. There has to be some balance between technological development and actual exciting racing. Because if we think about, the old Yamaha M1 of Rossi and Lorenzo, for example, yes, they were at the cutting edge of technology for that time. Of course they were, but they didn't have scoops in them that military fighter jets have. And it was brilliant and it was fun to watch because the bikes were all equal to some degree. Admittedly, you had different tire manufacturers at that point as well, but that just furthers the argument for it. I have said the 3 Bs since the beginning of the season. Bring back Bridgestone. I want Bridgestone tires back in MotoGP. And Leo, by God, I'm not going to rest until it happens because I hate these Michelin tires so much. I mean, the fact that Michelin are kind of like Honda. The fact that you have a piece of equipment that doesn't work above a certain temperature is abominable. And they get a lot of funding from Dorna to be the official tire manufacturer of MotoGP. Get your heads out of your collective asses and get a tire that works, or allow other manufacturers. This is what I want to see. Now, whether you can actually get them, maybe that's a different story. Maybe that's much harder. But I would love to see the likes of Bridgestone, Pirelli, Continental, the big tire companies come in and provide alternatives. I don't like only having one manufacturer because if they're good, they're great, fair enough. But if it's Michelin, the tires are awful. They don't last. And everybody's having to go through all these different compounds just to find a tire that doesn't end up like ice by the end of the race. It's not good enough, in my opinion. I really don't think it is. And it's a big contributor to the issue that you're talking about when it comes to racing. Bring back other tire manufacturers. This is my solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult topic with these tire manufacturers, because on one hand, yes, you have competitors who maybe push each other to develop a better tire. Maybe you get different characteristics like we get with the bikes now, that at some tracks, maybe let's say a Dunlop tire works better, and on the other tracks a Bridgestone works better, and then on the next a Michelin works better, and then on the next Pirelli. But you have the risk that you have like a KTM tire manufacturer there who works nowhere, and it's just basically a piece of shit. So you're equaling the playing field, because you say, okay, you have one tire manufacturer for everybody, which means that everybody can have like the same base and can develop the bike around the tires. And it's no secret that you don't have to develop a fast bike. You have to develop a bike for the tires right now.
Up to Yamaha.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret, but there's like a valid argument for having one tire manufacturer. Like there is a valid argument for having spec electronics or whatever. You know, they basically have spec brakes. They basically have spec suspensions, because I don't know. Would be interesting to know if Öhlins develops a different suspension for Ducati as for Suzuki or for Yamaha. I would assume, but I don't know. Would be interesting to know. But yeah, or like Brembo, do they have a different brake for the Honda than the Yamaha, or is it everybody has the same brakes? So there's benefits to having spec tires as well. But I can see the criticism, but I don't necessarily know if a second time manufacturer would have solved the problem, because you still have these stupid winglets. You still would have had those ride height devices who make it more difficult, A, to overtake, and B, to keep tire temperatures at a level where you can operate. But yeah, also electronics, I would like to keep the ones who are relevant for safety, of course. Riding a MotoGP bike without traction control would be bonkers, but get rid of all the electronics which isn't necessary for safety, to make the rider have a bigger impact. I want to see people like going maybe a little bit wide here, having different lines, having to wrestle the bike. Those kinds of moments are very spectacular and satisfying to watch, and they bring the fields, I believe, more into a human state, because when everybody is operating like at peak what is physically possible, then it's difficult to make a difference, and it's difficult to overtake, because let's take away the winglets, let's take away the ride height device, let's take away the tires. But if everybody is extremely good at what they do, like oval racing is like the most basic shit ever. You just press the gas and go around in a circle. But because it's so easy, everybody can do it, and therefore it gets really close to make it really difficult to make a difference. And it's really close. Yeah, you have slipstream. You don't have to tell me that, but take this as an example. Like if everybody is operating at such a high level and everything is defined by such small margins, then it's difficult to have entertaining races. It's difficult to have spectacular moments, spectacular overtakes. I mean, like Pedro did last year in Qatar, where he went from the pit lane to the race victory. This is what I want to see, and this is made possible by less electronics, no winglets, no ride height devices in Moto3, and the slipstream effect is much greater, yes, but you know where I'm trying to get with my point, that it would be interesting to let the rider make more of a difference, which would be achieved through less electronics, less aero, less ride height devices, and make it a little bit more fun, add a little bit of spice there, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. I think losing that individual importance would be equally as detrimental. So yeah, I agree.
Also, I want to see races where everybody can go full gas for, in this case, 30 laps. I don't need to have like different engine mappings to manage the fuel consumption. I don't need to have different engine mappings to manage the tire wear. I don't need to have people having to ride conservative to preserve tires. I don't need to see this. I want to see 24 of the best riders and Stefan Bradl going going at it at 100%, battling the fuck out of each. Basically, Moto3 is everything I want. And they don't have to worry about tires. They don't have to worry about fuel, because they don't have to worry about electronics. They just get on the bike and it's absolute carnage, and I love it. I want to see it. I want to see more of it. And yeah, I would like to get my MotoGP races back, which are fascinating to watch, which are interesting. Like, I believe it was 2018 in Assen, where everybody was basically on par, and yeah, one of the best races. I want to see stuff like this, and
2000 and what year was it at Phillip Island? It wasn't
15.
15.
Yeah.
Yeah,
15.
races like that. I mean, basically
Yeah.
steroid infused Moto
Yeah.
3. Give us steroid infused Moto 3.
Yeah. Could also be Assen 2016. I don't remember. But yeah, all I want to say, I want to see closer racing with a lot of overtakes, a lot of spectacular things happen, but still safely. I don't need to see people get injured or worse, like on a regular basis. No, so there have to be like this fine margin. Okay, this is spectacular, this is what we want to encourage, and this is dangerous, we want to get rid of it. And you will never get motorcycle racing which is 100% safe. I get that, but at least try your best. And back to the topic, MotoGP has a problem with boring races, and they need to fix it. And this is my opinion on how to achieve it. I would rather watch like buy 7 superbikes, like by Ducati, Aprilia, Honda, yada yada yada, put slicks on them and race with them. I would rather see this if it's competitive than a MotoGP bike which is 10 seconds faster,
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of crazy different things you could do to make it better. I mean, if it were possible, it'd be brilliant to put a chimp on a MotoGP bike and put Fabio Quartararo in a mini moto and see who would win. I'd pay to watch that.
I mean, I've seen dogs ride skateboards, so it shouldn't be entirely impossible. But
Just trying
yeah,
to get it to work out the controls and everything, and the
yeah,
ride has device.
yeah. No, but I would like to talk about Moto2 a little, because it was take out Raul Fernandez. But the battle for P2 was absolutely
Oh,
amazing. This is what I want to see, basically.
yeah, absolutely. It was brilliant from beginning to end. It really, really was. I thought Augusto Fernandez was brilliant. He checked out pretty early on, to be fair, and he just didn't let him go. But that battle for P2 was sensational all race. Obviously, our Lord and Savior himself, Lord Pedro Acosta, got P2, brilliant result. Sam Lowes had a great race. He got P3. And then we had the likes of Fermin Aldeguer, who were coming in and pushing at the end as well, which was, of course, equally as great to see. And all around, it was a really great race, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, the first 10 laps were absolutely amazing. Raul
Yes.
Fernandez fought from, I believe, 4th or 5th or something along to the front, where he overtook 3 dudes in the Omega, where basically you don't overtake. But it was spectacular, nice for him. And Pedro, he was a motherfucker on the brakes. It
Oh,
seemed like he had no grip at all towards the end, because the last 10 laps again were pretty interesting. The middle part was kind of quiet, I would say.
yeah.
And yeah, but it got close towards the end. Pedro seemed to have no grip at all, and managed to overtake Sam Lowes a couple of times back with his superior braking position. It was also very interesting that he stayed on the main straight much further to the right than everybody else, because he is so good at attacking the corners like in a triangle way, and yeah, also Aki Ayo said that he struggles a little bit in hotter conditions, and he also has like some problems still with the fast flowing corners, where he's really good into those triangles, but or not triangles, in this tighter corners where you have to ride more in a triangle way, then have to have
Sort of
a
like a
flowing.
90-degree
Yeah,
angle.
yeah, break deep into the corners, turn the bike, and accelerate out of there. He's very good there, but he has some problems in faster corners. And in the Sachsenring, basically, there are only faster corners, which shows that he improves a lot, which is important. He's still a rookie, don't forget this. But he's doing very good. He took some older riders, much more experienced riders, to school this season, and he will do it again. And next year, probably, he will take everybody to school. But yeah, very, very entertaining. What was kind of sad that Vietti threw the thing away. I mean, Canet, he was very fast despite his injury. Kudos to him. He still was better than, like, I don't know if he finished ahead of Ayagura, but he still was better than basically all of his championship contenders. And now Ralph Fernandez entered the title picture, which could be very, very interesting. But yeah, all I'm trying to say is a little bit sad for Vietti. It feels like he doesn't want to win a championship, but nobody does at the moment, which makes it exciting again. So yeah, and also at the last point, I would like to give a shout out to Master Schrotter. He finished P4 in his home GP, and yeah, spectacular race. What do we want to see more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, where to start? I guess I'll start with Marcel Schroeder. Brilliant weekend. Had a spectacular finish. He pushed Sam Lowes and Pedro Acosta all the way. Had a great weekend. Just briefly before I go on to everybody else, that point you made about Pedro Acosta sticking much more onto the right-hand side of the straight. The other advantage that has for Pedro is that nobody can slipstream off of him on the straight, because nobody can follow that same racing line. So what Pedro is doing is actually creating his own angle of attack for those corners that nobody else can use. Really clever, Pedro. I see what you're doing. That is why you are pit lane Pedro, because you are the best. You are the best at doing this. You're the only one that can do this. So shout out Pedro Acosta. As for the sort of slightly middle of the pack, Aaron Canet had a good race. Obviously, he's still recovering from that car crash. Thankfully, he's okay. And he had a good weekend. Ayagura did finish above him. He finished in P8, Canet in P9. But overall, still a really good weekend for Canet. He'll take that mostly. And one person who I was disappointed in was Joe Roberts, actually. Joe had a good weekend. At the beginning of the race, he was as high as P5, and he ended up dropping back to P13. He will be disappointed with that. He would have expected a lot more from the Sachsenring, but it is what it is. He'll move on to the next race, and overall, the entire race was just really, really good. It's hard to say much more in this, but it was just a fantastic race. It's more of what we want to see.
Yeah, I believe I mistakenly said Rolf Fernandez. Obviously, I mean Augusto Fernandez. It gets kind of confusing, and it's late, so please
Too many
forgive me.
Fernandez's, right? Let's
Yeah.
have a different name here.
Like everybody's the same who's called Fernandez. So yeah, no, but first of all, Aaron Canet made a crucial mistake, which is, as far as I'm concerned, he let his girlfriend drive, which is always a big risk.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
No.
We're in dangerous territory here now.
No,
Reverse.
just kidding, of course. Just kidding, of course. Yeah. I believe it's getting a little late, so I would like to jump quickly to Moto3.
Yeah, absolutely.
I believe Moto2, we covered it. It should be interesting in Assen, and then the championship seems to be wide open for the second half of the season. Will be interesting. Yeah, regarding Moto3, it's yeah, not a typical Moto3 race. Wasn't necessarily the most entertaining one compared with previous races, but I guess this is due to the track. We've seen this a couple of times at the Sachsenring, because it's just not a slipstream track, and you can break away quite easily, But Isan Guevara, take a bow, very, very good. This motherfucker can race. I didn't pick him as my championship favorite preseason for no reason. He is very, very good. And also, like Dennis Foggia managed to recover a little bit, if you like so, because he had a series of bad luck. In Mugello, he crashed on a tear-off. In Catalonia, he had some chain problems. But it's good to see him back, and it was a nice battle between him and Sergio Garcia. So I would hope that he manages to have an equally strong ending to the season as he had last year, because when or if he does, he will have something to say in the championship. And also, I believe Assen will be a favorable track for the Honda because it's more of a flowing type bike, which suits the track. And I thought because of this that he will win in Germany. I thought that the Honda is more suitable to the track, and I thought that Dennis Foggia will make Dennis the Menace comeback, but yeah, he kind of did, but Isa was just better, which is fine. But yeah, very, very entertaining, yet not the typical Moto3 race. But yeah.
Yeah, this wasn't the carnage episode that you normally see with Moto3, but no less entertaining, in my opinion. I mean, Izan Guevara is a special talent. I mean, to dominating any motorcycle race is impressive, but dominating a Moto3 race where you never see domination is just unbelievably impressive. Credit to him, did a brilliant job. Dennis Foggia came back to get a very good second. I mean, Gas are just dominating everybody. Sergio Garcia got another podium. That'll help his title challenge a lot. And then we have Japanese representation in fourth and fifth, Sasaki and Suzuki. They did a good job. And all around, it was just a really, really good race. Daniel Holgado, brilliant P6. Adrian Fernandez in eighth. Just some really good performances. And yeah, once again, Moto3 does not disappoint.
Yeah, Carlos Tatai played a little bit of bowling. He reminded me of Taka Nakagami, or David Munoz did a similar move in the Red Bull Rookies Cup race last year, where it was towards the end, to be fair, but he took out like everybody except one into turn one. So yeah, I'm excited a little bit to see what Race Direction will do, because you literally can compare this move with Takas. So it would be nice to see an explanation if they penalize him. I don't know if they already did. I don't know if they didn't. So basically, I know nothing. As usual. But yeah, and also sad for Joel Kelso. He crashed out in the leading group, and he was actually in a decent position. Maybe it's just bringing bad luck to make the podcast with me, because last time when I made the podcast with Remy, literally on the next day he broke his wrist at motocross training at Rocco's Ranch, and now Joel Kerzo crashed immediately after recording the podcast with me. So maybe there's some kind of problem there. Maybe I should start to make a podcast with Darren Binder or something, but he will crash either way, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, but sad to see. It was a little bit of a difficult situation because I couldn't judge the crash. So I went back to the video pass and selected the helicopter view to get a view of it. And I knew he was battling with David Munoz. And as everybody knows who follows Junior GP a little bit, there were some tricky situations with David Munoz to be quite nice to him, let's say. He's a rather dangerous rider in many situations. And I was ready to go on a rant, but Joel crashed on by himself. But it's good to see him making progress. He's a rookie, and he went to Germany and Assen last year as a wildcard rider. So it's good to see that he makes this progress. It's good to see him fighting at the top. of the class right now, where on the track where he has like a little bit more of experience. I mean, crashes happen, sucks, but take away the positives and move on. So yeah, overall a decent weekend for him. I'm glad he's not hurt as far as I'm concerned. And yeah.
We should really start inviting Jorge Lorenzo and Mark Marquez onto the podcast. We need an Uno reverse card of fortune, and maybe that's the way to do it. No, I feel sorry for Joel Kelso. He looked really promising most of the weekend. Just unfortunate. It's one of those things, really, isn't it? But yeah, overall, Moto3, I was really happy with. It delivered really well again, just in a different way. Maybe that's the sign of a real superstar being born in Izan Guevara. He's like that famous sword, like the Knights of the Round Table sword. He who can dominate a Moto3 race will be a world champion. Maybe this is the prophecy. Maybe Izan Guevara is the prophet we've been waiting for. But yeah, it was a great race overall. I have no complaints with it. Apart from Carlos Tata, you dickhead, what were you doing?
Yeah, I mean, the spot of the chosen one is already taken by Lord Pedro himself. And with that, I would come to an end with the podcast. It's getting late here. I mean, it's 10 minutes before 11 p.m. So time to go to bed because tomorrow is work again. So I have to get up early. Yeah, but enjoyed the races more or less, Moto2 and Moto3 more than MotoGP, but still a great episode. Love to talk to you, and let's see how we do it in Assen, because obviously I will be there attending the races live, so should be possible to make it Sunday because it's not that far away. But yeah, if not, Monday. So I'll be excited because I'm sitting at the final chicane, so there should be a lot of carnage there. And we have David Munoz, so everything is possible.
Oh, well, it's written then.
Yeah. So glad to talk to you, and goodbye. See you next week.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for watching once again. Pleasure to talk to you, Leo, and I will see you on the other side of the Dutch Grand Prix.
Goodbye.